Composition is usually determined by the cinematographer, but with digital filmmaking becoming the norm, editors are actually able to compose shots too. For example, if your footage is shot in 4K and you're exporting it in 1080, you actually have a lot of grace to recompose the shot in the edit. A great cheat for recomposing shots is this grid overlay. This overlay breaks your shot down into the left frame, center frame, and right frame, as well as the upper third, middle third, and lower third. For whatever reason, and I cannot explain why, it's really pleasing for the eyes to hit this line. That's a common way to describe composition, or rather, that's an introductory idea of composition for film and TV. But actually, this is one of the few rules in web media where compositing as an editor isn't really that important. This is mostly due to the nature of the content that we're making, and how we frame isn't as important as something else. How to make the comfortable viewing experience and lead my eyes. This is called eye tracing. It is true that a majority of content watched on YouTube is viewed on a phone. But have you ever considered the fact that we're never looking at the entirety of our phones, only certain aspects of it? And how uncomfortable that can be, having to constantly be looking around and trying to figure out where to look. That can be a really frustrating experience. So wouldn't it be better to remove that issue? Especially on YouTube, where we love the rule of cutting extremely fast, and often without enough time for us to fully comprehend all the information of the new frame. It's a mistake to assume that we see everything instantly, and we need those few moments to understand everything. And so if we're having to constantly be looking around, well, that sucks. So my suggestion is this: if you're cutting, also consider where we're looking in the frame. And if you can, recompose the next shot so the next point of information that we need to look at is reasonably close to the original shot. And so we don't have to scan the entire image as much. George Miller's Mad Max Fury Road is one of the best action movies ever made. And the majority of the movie has these very intense and fast cuts. But we know fast cuts help with action, right? But it gets frustrating when all of the fast cuts mean we're having to constantly move our eyes to distinguish where the action is. So the director, George Miller, chose to film his entire movie with center framing. So you don't have to go looking for eye lines during its distinctive fast cuts. He's able to do fast, rhythmic cutting to generate a sense of urgency in the action, but us as the audience are able to maintain focus and coherency in the action. I did the same philosophy with Logan Paul by using eyeline and composition to inform the story. In Logan Paul's training to become a soldier, we entered his first attempt at the extreme obstacle course. In this sequence, Logan in the story is incapable of completing this course, and it's manic, panicky, and overwhelming. And so I informed that idea by consistently cutting to shots with inconsistent eye lines, where you had to spend significant time readjusting to where the main subject and action is. It's uncomfortable to watch, and so you feel similar to how Logan felt during that sequence. But then he's given an example, a Navy SEAL Marine who was an absolute badass, someone who's very capable of completing this obstacle course without an issue. And so I used that narrative information to inform my cuts. And I had the privilege of using 4K footage. So once I created an action sequence of his badassery, I then recomposed each of the shots to ensure that his actions are consistently center framed. And it made the audience experience his high skill with fast cuts, but with comfortable eye tracing, which showcases his skill level and competency versus Logan. The difference in coherence due to how and where a cut guides your eyes is a ridiculously powerful narrative tool. So, think about how composition and eyeline can also help being a narrative tool in informing your cuts. If you have the benefit to crop in, Use a free-line grid to help be a guide on aesthetically pleasing framing. And also, as you choose to make a cut, consider the most common and likely place your viewer is looking in the frame, and give thought on how you want to guide their eyes into the next most important piece of information on your next cut, especially if you're cutting fast.